Doing some moral dilemmas.
Doing some moral dilemmas. I'm here. I'm Libby again.
Yeah. Fun little. I feel like this is like a fun little like extra thing.
Yeah. It's raining and we didn't want to go out yet, so we're doing
so here we are with moral dilemmas.
This is the
There's a little link into
to
the episode, to the more serious episode of Would You Use a Death Tag. This
can be the silly segment.
This is the silly segment. Okay. So Jeff and his best friend Stephen go to different high schools. Go to different high schools. I feel like this is going to be very elaborate. They've been friends since 3rd grade, but since Jeff transferred to another school for 10th grade, they've started to grow apart.
Okay.
One Saturday, Stephen asked Jeff if he could drive him into the nearest city. He didn't have his licence yet and said he thought it would be fun for them to hang out. Jeff felt uncomfortable saying yes, because he'd only had his licence for 6 months, and his parents told him he wasn't allowed to drive in the city yet. But Stephen said that he wouldn't be able to go without Jeff's help, and they never got to see each other anymore. Jeff agreed, and they felt that afternoon, after telling Jeff's parents they left that afternoon rather, after telling Jeff's parents they were driving to another friend's house. Are there layers to this? When they got to the city, Stephen asked Jeff... I love it was Stephen, not just Steve.
I've already forgotten which one's the one that's driving.
And me too. Which one's... Oh, Jeff.
Jeff's the driver.
Jeff has his licence.
Okay.
But I live 6
I
months.
thought it was going to be that the guy without the licence was going to be driving.
I know, yeah.
How is this ever going to be a dilemma where we don't say, obviously...
Wait, okay, again. When they got to the city, Stephen asked Jeff to drive across town to a particular address. When they arrived, Stephen asked Jeff to wait in the car while he ran inside for a few minutes.
What?
After Stephen returned to the car, Jeff asked what was going on, and Stephen pulled out a bag of white powder.
Oh.
He admitted it was his drug connection and that the powder was crystal meth. When Jeff asked him why he didn't tell him that was why they came to the city, Stephen said he didn't tell him because he figured Jeff wouldn't go. Well, of course Jeff wouldn't go. Okay. That night, Jeff couldn't sleep because he felt overwhelmed by what he had. No, it isn't. Okay, so basically what it's getting to is that does Jeff confess or not? Yeah, this isn't a moral dilemma. Confess to a teacher that he really trusts.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just do, don't you?
Yeah.
That's rubbish, okay.
It's terrible. I just wanted them to get together.
Oh, yeah. Why can't I find any good ones? Oh my god, the trolley. Okay, I mean, what would you do in the trolley situation?
I mean, it's difficult because in that situation I'd realistically probably be frozen and not do anything. But also being forced into a fast decision like that, maybe I would act. But my answer of what the right thing to do is to take the action. I don't think the fact that you're taking an action versus standing there changes it. Like, I know that's the argument, is like you're actively making the choice, but if you know what's going to happen, then your decision to not move is also actively making a choice, in my opinion. So I think the right thing to do is to switch the track. But whether in that actual situation I would freeze is another thing.
Yeah. No, I would. I think like similar. Like I feel like in the actual circumstance, one of the things where you don't want to kill anyone, right? Obviously. So I mean that's the whole point of the moral dilemma of the trolley problem. So you're trying to decide what to do, and then logically, yeah, you've got to kill the one person for the 5. But then you could say, well, what if that one person is like somebody you know or something?
Oh, well, that's when it gets more complicated. Because realistically, I'm probably selfish enough that I'd just justify in my head that since I didn't touch anything. Like if the person I knew was on the track it was on and there were 5 people on the other track, I don't know if I could make the decision to switch it to 5. But if it was going to kill 5 people I didn't know, unless I switched it to kill someone I know, I think I'd probably be able to justify it to myself, because I'd already be pretty frozen in that situation.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, I probably couldn't live with myself either way.
No.
But, yeah.
It's hard. It's a hard one, but I suppose that's the whole point of moral dilemma in the another bit. It's the thing of there's no winning. You've always had some sort of like moral failure per se.
Yeah, I mean the fact that it's somebody I know I would value more, I disagree with on a fundamental level. I think my choice would be immoral. But if I'm being honest with myself, like we're all selfish to a degree.
A 17-year-old boy is brought into the emergency room gravely injured.
Biochemistry question.
Yeah. He needs a heart transplant, but there are limited hearts available, and he's been on drugs, so it's quite likely that he will overdose and die in the next few years. At the same time, an older lady is brought into the emergency room. She also needs a heart transplant. She's well into her 70s, but is loved by her grandchildren and is an active tennis player. She has not finalised her will. Both people desperately need the heart transplant, and they will die otherwise. There are 2 people, there is 1 heart available. Who would you give it to?
I mean, I feel like the question is making a lot of assumptions about the 17-year-old. Because, you can say, they've got these problems and they're likely to overdose. If that's known by the hospital, then, what should happen is that they should be put through proper, rehabilitation, which I do believe works, and therapy and stuff. So if the resources are there to make sure that actually happens, then I think I don't know, because, like, you know, I don't want it to be an ageist thing. Like, if it was somebody, say, in their mid-40s, I feel like that would be a much harder choice. But, like, if you are able to rehabilitate that 17-year-old, which I think is very possible, you know, if given the right resources, if we're in a situation where those resources won't be provided, then give it to the elderly woman. But if you can actually realistically give those resources and make sure that they're not going to relapse, then I just think you have to think about it in terms of number of years.
Yeah.
And I think the question's quite pessimistic about, oh, well, the teenager's definitely going to die in the next few years. I think if the proper resources are given, that wouldn't be the case. Yeah, I mean, in terms of finalisation of the will and stuff, like, I just think, I mean, partly, if you're that old, you should have finalised your will.
I mean, realistically.
But, like, also, like, I that then comes down to, like, property and money and stuff, which I just don't think is as important as, like, human life. Yeah, I don't know, because it says, like, she's an active tennis player, so you're like, you know, that's making you want to think she's healthy, but also she needs this heart transplant, she's not that healthy. But I am partly, like, at that age, you know, complications come one after another. And you know what, it can still give you, like, an extra 10, even 15 years. Like, my grandpa had to have, like, some of his heart valves replaced, and that when that surgery happened, it was very likely he wasn't going to make it. And that was, I think, just before I was born, and he ended up living until I was, I think, 15. So,
wow.
Yeah, so that gave him, like, 15 extra years.
Yeah.
But also, like, in terms of his quality of life, like, he enjoyed what he was doing, but he was mostly staying in the house. So I think, you know, when you've lived for 70 years and the average life expectancy, assuming we're in, like, the UK or the US, is about 76, I think that's kind of a good length of life to live. And ultimately, you know, your grandchildren care about you, of course, but they are going to have to deal with this loss sometime soon. So yeah, I mean, it's tough because technically you could live to, like, 100 and that would be 30 extra years, but I just think in terms of potential, if you did have the proper resources to make sure that the 17-year-old wasn't going to relapse, then that would be the right decision. What about you?
Yeah, I think, like yourself, I think it's a tough one. I think that if I was... It's not fair to maybe think about it like this, but if I was the elderly lady, I would want, no matter the situation, I would want the 17-year-old to have it.
Oh, really? That I hadn't thought about that, but you're probably right. Like, I think a lot of women in that position, or anyone in that position, if you've lived a good, long life, I think you would kind of want the chance to go to somebody younger than you. I think that's the attitude of a lot of elderly people. They're kind of ready. I know my grandma in that situation would want it to go to the 17-year-old. So
yes, and I think that it's presented very pessimistically in the way that it says, like, the child's been on, you know, they've been doing drugs and is going to die and, like, overdose.
But they're 17, there's so much time for them to have therapy and get better.
Precisely, and I think that how they've presented the older lady, as they say in the quote, like, is loved by her grandchildren, active. They're making her sound very amiable, and, like, of course, like, obviously she is, I'm sure, but it's how the moral dilemma itself is presented to you. It's basically like, age will tell you to do one thing, but look at the sort of people they are, and it's trying to goad you into basically choosing lifestyle over age a bit, and it's I don't know, because there's an inherent demonisation of addiction.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I'd choose the boy as well.
Addiction is an illness like any other, and if you actually were to treat that and treat the whatever underlying mental health conditions have led to that, or even the, you know, life circumstances that might have led them to that, then yeah, if you put in those resources, then that would be the right decision. I mean, if you're in a place where you just know that that's not going to happen, unfortunately, then maybe it would be the wrong decision. But
and ultimately, with the heart, surely there is some compatibility stuff as well. So, like,
as biochemists, we know that this would never actually happen.
It's like literally it wouldn't be compatible with, you know,
people. Yeah,
it's
not just like, oh, you've got one heart and two people, and they're both perfectly, like, matched. Maybe he's the grandson of her. Maybe that's why they.
Oh my god, he's that grandson. Yeah.
Well, and she definitely wanted to go to him.
I'd say she would, like, 100% want to go to him.
But in terms of tissue matching, we know this isn't going to work anyway.
Suspicious. Okay, let's try and find the next one. The lying about a murderer dilemma.
Ooh.
It's a very short one, but a murderer comes to your door,
get away.
Great, asking if their intended victim is inside your home.
How do you know they're a murderer?
I think the greater background to this is somebody's come knocking on your door saying, "Help! I'm being chased. Somebody's, like, out to kill me." The murderer then comes to the door and is like, "Where are they? Are they inside?" Should you lie to protect the innocent victim, even though it involves deception? I mean,
What?
yes.
I lie on a
that's
daily
stupid.
basis over the smallest things.
That's stupid. Even that's not a moral dilemma. That's rubbish.
That's so stupid.
Oh, okay,
That
yeah.
was a big intake of breath.
Because there's a lot that you can talk about here. A person gives birth to a baby with a severe genetic disorder
Oh no.
that will cause great suffering and a shortened lifespan. Is it ethical for the parents to end the baby's life to prevent that suffering?
I mean, okay, so as biochemists, we've probably both come across this before, of like genetic testing, especially for things that, so there are like certain illnesses, certain genetic illnesses we can test for that will, like, I'm not talking about Down syndrome where you can live a long and happy life. I'm talking about ones where you're going to die within the first few months and be in intense pain for all of that time.
Yeah.
And the general idea of what you should do in that situation is that we test for those things and we like abort those children so that they're never going to have to suffer through that. Now, I guess the question is, obviously the child's been born. This should not have happened. There should have been tests to make sure.
If it's a severe disorder.
It would have, realistically, it would have been detected. But for whatever reason, maybe this was a cryptic pregnancy, maybe they didn't know. So, yeah, in that situation, first of all, it depends what the illness is. If we're talking about Down syndrome, absolutely not. Yeah, if we're just talking about something that's going to make them hard to care for, absolutely not. If we're talking about something that's going to kill them within a year and have them in intense pain, which is what I'm assuming this question is about, then it gets a lot more difficult because, of course, it is just murder.
Yeah.
But I do think that there should be a medical way to do this. I don't think the parents should have to make that decision.
Brings in the whole euthanasia.
Yeah, but it's not euthanasia because they don't have the agency to make that decision for themselves.
No,
I mean, I do believe in euthanasia, but that isn't the same as this because in euthanasia,
if they're within, say, that young, yeah.
Yeah, of course,
they're that young,
the child isn't going to be able to make that decision.
No, of course.
And so part of me wants to be like, oh, slippery slope argument. If you say this is okay, then where does it stop?
But this is focusing on
Yeah.
the pain of that child rather than it being there's a problem with this illness or people shouldn't have this, and it is focusing on the pain.
That's the thing. I wouldn't think it's the same as other like kind of eugenics sort of arguments because it is specifically about the pain and an illness where somebody cannot survive. So I want to say the right thing to do is to not make the being suffer, but I also don't know. I mean, if the parents did make that decision, I don't think I would believe in prosecuting them. I think
no.
I think that I would feel too much pity for the parents in that situation. But whether I can actively encourage them doing it is another thing.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It's like
ultimately it shouldn't be something the parents should have to do. That should be something taken care of by the medical community.
Yes.
Because
if the child is in such pain, I mean that's just awful.
Yeah.
In those situations. I suppose when, like I said, severe. So it's like, to what level you're thinking and which sorts of illnesses or genetic disorders. So, yeah. But, yeah, in that case, I think it's pretty... Not cut and dry, but it's...
I mean, yeah, but I would say that should be something that the doctors should do, and it shouldn't be something that the parents would have to live with.
No.
I mean, they'd still have to sign off on it, of course, but, yeah. I mean, it's just a horrible situation, and this is why we have testing to try and avoid this.
Well, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Not necessarily moral dilemma-wise, but kind of a similar idea of, like, human suffering. My grandma has dementia, and so, like, right now, she's, recognising people and whatever, but there are people in the care home who are very, very ill.
Yeah.
And suffering. But I don't know. You kind of
because
getting
you
at.
can't give informed consent in that state. Yeah, I think the thing is that dementia, especially in the early stages, is very like mentally taxing and painful for the person in that situation.
Yes.
But I think the further along you are and the more you forget, the less aware you are of reasons to be upset. And so I think you actually can reach kind of a stage of, I mean, I don't know a lot about this, so maybe it's not the case, but I think you can reach a stage where you've forgotten so much that you can just really enjoy the simple things.
Yes.
And in that situation, I would say that person isn't suffering. I mean, if they were in physical pain as well and they were, despite not being in their right state of mind, were asking to die, then I think that's a different situation. But I don't think if they're, I mean, I've not got super close family members that have got dementia, but I have my grandma's best friend has very severe Alzheimer's, and because she lives in the US, I only see her once a year, so I see the progression in very big jumps. And she gets very frustrated. It's very sad when she does, but she also gets a lot of joy out of things, because she's in a care home now, but for the previous couple of years she was living in a kind of a condo where she would have her caretaker come and like look after her and do stuff for her, and she would really enjoy that, because she would forget which things she'd done and which things the caretaker had done. So I remember she would tell me about how beautiful her garden is and how proud she is of how all this gardening she'd done, because the caretaker was doing beautiful gardening and telling her that it was hers, that it was her garden, that she'd done that. And sometimes they would do it together, you know, they'd like help do it together, but it was mostly the caretaker doing it. And yeah, she got a lot of joy out of taking people to her garden and being like, look at all of these beautiful flowers that I've planted. And she would bring like a cake to a gathering, or some really nice dessert that she'd made with her caretaker, you know, kind of like when you're making something with a toddler, they just stir it around a bit. But she doesn't remember that, and so she gets to bring this beautiful dessert being told she's made it. And even while we're eating it, she might have forgotten she's making it, and she goes, oh, this is lovely, and we're like, you made this, and she gets so much joy out of that. And so I do think that it's a very nuanced situation, because you can get a lot of, I mean, in one sense, I guess she's being lied to, and, you know, if she was in her right mind, would that just make her more upset? But she's not in her right mind, and so these things can bring her happiness, and there's still things for her to live for. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I think you see, like, the simple things, like they do, like, card games and, like, bingo and stuff, but you do see the enjoyment, and I think, like you say, it's that, because you don't remember perhaps, but it's like the simple things, and I think you're inherently, from your own personal position, you're projecting. So you're seeing them through, they are not who they used to be, they are suffering.
Exactly, but they aren't who they used to be. So my grandma will say all the time, like, I'm going to keep going until my body completely gives out, but my mind goes, I want to be gone. And I'm just like, you might feel that way, and you might be like looking at your friend going through this and thinking, I don't want to do that, which is completely understandable. It's terrifying. But at that point, the you that you know right now that's saying that is already dead. And it's not your choice to say that the new person that takes over your body needs to die as well. Because in the transition stage where that person's kind of slipping in and out and they can feel themselves going, that's tough. And,
that's awful.
And that is horrible. And maybe in that position, if they wanted to stop living, that would be a different thing, because they'd still have somewhat of their right mind there to make that decision. But once that person's gone and it's just an entirely new person, it's no longer that previous person's decision, in my opinion. They're a completely different person, and that person can find lots of joy, and it might still be heartbreaking if that old person could see where they were now. But, you know, a new person entirely has been born into that body, and they should be cared for as their own person, I think.
Yeah.
And if they can still experience happiness and things, then they should get that.
Absolutely, yeah. No, you put that really nicely. I mean, I think ultimately, like, say, my grandma, I think, yes, while, I mean, if you saw yourself, if that was possible, that would be horrific. But also because of the sort of person that she was, I think she would, as a just generally compassionate person, would almost see herself and be like, but she still deserves.
Yeah, you have to see them as a different person.
Joy and to be cared for. And I think that's what's hard. I think the pain comes from the family and the people who know the difference.
And that's why
the
family needs to support, and they need to try and kind of grieving the person that was there, because they're not there anymore. They've already died, essentially. Yeah. But instead learning to love and care for this new person that's taken over their body, and give them the best few years or however long they have as a kind of a gift to the person who you loved that used to occupy that body. I mean, it's much easier said than done, I'm sure, and I've not had to experience this on a very personal level, so, you know, who knows, but I feel like that might be the perspective that would help me get by, is that I can grieve the loss of the person because they've already died. I think one of the hard things is when you're grieving someone who's died, it's over, and you have that closure, and I think in this case, if you kind of tell yourself it's over and that person's gone, then you can stop grieving that loss, but learn to take care of and love this new person. I don't know, maybe that would make it easier.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's so very gradual.
Yeah.
So there's no like distinct.
The worst part, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's like, it's really strange, because I think sometimes you see, I definitely see the two people, right?
Yeah. And then I understand that stage with both, because of course the person you used to know is frustrated and
there's like the little glimmers, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think that's when it becomes slightly odd. But I do agree with you in the way that you're going to be grieving twice, essentially.
Yeah.
And I still find value in that you still speak to people like as you would have done, but they are a new person, and I think
you can learn to get to know that
you
new
can
person.
precisely. but
much easier said than done.
Much easier said than done, yeah. And I think it's, sometimes you see people who are, very late stages sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it becomes quite saddening. But yeah, you're the idea of, say, do you relieve their suffering per se, do you end that person's life, you are ultimately putting your own pain onto them. You're seeing, I would not want to be in that position, but you don't know how they are feeling presently, and they can't express that either. So
that's the thing is that that's the thing is that they are going to still have bouts of happiness, and it's worth living for those.
It is.
Yeah.
Should I find another one?
Yeah.
Or
I'm having fun.
I'm having fun.
I feel like a movie star.
This one's a joke. I promised a friend I'd meet up with her for lunch.
Oh no.
Promises are ethically important.
Yes.
But on the way to lunch, I saw another friend who was sick, quite ill, and who asked me to help her to get to the hospital. She could probably get there on her own, but she's quite upset and would really like my help. Which friend should have priority? I mean, for God's sake, that's silly.
I mean, if the friend you're meeting for lunch is seriously upset about this, you need to reevaluate your friendship, I think. As long as you just show a little bit of disappointment and, you're sorry that you can't see them for lunch, then...
God, that's awful. I mean,
unless this is the lunch friend's, last day to live, I think.
I know, yeah, if I was the friend, I'd be like, yeah, you go take the other person to hospital, please. There's also the one...
I'd offer to go too. Hospital lunch.
Yeah. Well, do you tell Grandma the truth about the ugly sweater she gave you?
No, why? I don't see the need to always be honest.
Silly. I think a lot of things are grounded in being honest.
As an autistic person, I do think I'm probably a lot more honest than the average person. I do tell white lies mainly for fun, and then I always come back on them and tell people, that wasn't even true. But yes, I think I am more honest than the average person. I know a lot of autistic people struggle to lie at all, and yeah, I just think in some situations you can just not say anything. Oh, let's remember not to send my grandparents this podcast episode. My grandparents for uni bought me a rack of mugs to take with me, and they were not my style at all. I hate pink. They were pink and grey.
Okay.
And I've never once used them. I bought my own mugs that I wanted to use, and I always had them with me in case they came to visit, so I could get them out and pretend I was using them. Because why wouldn't you? I don't want to make them upset. But ultimately, they've done so much more for me and so much more meaningful things than buying me a rack of mugs for uni. And I think even if they did know that I didn't like it, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. So if they asked me directly, have you used them, maybe I would lie about it, maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I'd just gently tell them, pink's not really my colour. And now my sister's asked for them. She's just gone to uni and she said, I know you don't use those mugs, can I take them? And so she's got them and they'll get use and, maybe they'll get some happiness out of that. But I just don't think these things need to be that big of a deal. I guess if it's hand knit, then you probably need to put on a show of really liking it. But a lot of the time, these things just aren't that big. There's so much more to your relationship with your grandma than one jumper.
This is true. No, I agree. I think that's just pretend.
I don't think being honest in that situation is really a moral dilemma. I think it's more just if you're asked directly whether you want to keep up a lie or not. It depends how much that lie would take. If it requires you wearing it every week, maybe it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Samantha and her lover.
Yeah.
What's this?
You and Samantha have been friends since birth.
Oh.
No, since conception.
Ew. What? Are you twins?
Your mothers were friends.
Okay.
You were raised under the same. No, you were raised under the same set of moral code. Okay. You have different taste in men.
Oh no.
And same taste in shoes.
What?
I don't know. Once in high school, you shaved your head in an act of defiance and regretted it immediately. You called Sam, bawling like a drugged hyena. God, who wrote this?
This just sounds like misogyny.
It does a bit. Samantha came to school the next day bald. Aww. Oh. She smiles as you pick up your jaw from the floor. Time to go wig shopping, she says. She's always had your back. Now it's your turn. Okay. Samantha, now happily married to Joe. Joe, really? Okay. Calls you up one day to say hello. How are you and Joe, you ask. Thanks again for his help watching the kids last week. Remember how...
Yeah, I'm really getting immersed into this situation.
Remember how I set you two up for your first date 5 years ago?
Why would you feel the need to bring that up when they're married? That's so unnatural.
I'm fine. Also, she says, lowering her voice. I mean, she says dropping her voice, but I've changed it already.
Yeah.
I don't know who to tell, but I need to tell somebody. I have a boyfriend. You mean a husband? No, I'm cheating on Joe.
Oh my God.
So, okay, your couch looks different all of a sudden as the blood leaves your brain. What sort of GCSE? Okay.
This is fan fiction.
It actually is. But you have a husband, you repeat. Samantha. She's quiet. Who is it? You finally ask. Do you tell Joe about this?
Yes.
You love Joe?
Yes.
But do you love Samantha more?
It doesn't matter who you love more. One of them's making a betrayal, and it would be better for Samantha to be honest anyway.
This is not the end. You're disappointed right now. But it's not your business.
It is your business.
At least it's not your place to be the messenger. Right? Who is it, Samantha? You're slightly irritated now. Of course you can't tell Joe. That's between them. Well, I kind of would tell Joe, by the way.
Yeah.
Also, Joe owns are gone. You know he's got anger issues. Oh, there we go. Okay. It's possible he would pick it up in a fit of rage and kill the guy, kill the boyfriend, not Samantha. Okay. But if you don't tell and he finds out, would he turn around and direct that anger on you for failing him as a friend? Samantha finally tells you, I'm sleeping with your little brother.
Oh my god.
What do you do?
Okay, so the moral dilemma here is that we don't want to kill the brother?
I think essentially, after that elaborate fanfiction, it is you either are honest and tell Joe, but he might kill your brother, or you're not honest and he might kill you.
If we seriously think he might kill somebody, then we report him to the police.
I guess you not have a gun license.
Although the police probably wouldn't be much help, but that's another issue. I think
why can't we say
in any sort of cheating situation where I knew both people, my thing would be I am going to give the cheater the option to tell their partner themselves, and I'm going to say, if you don't tell them by X date, I will tell them, and I don't want to tell them, I want you to do it, but you give them the option to do that. And I think if you're seriously thinking that he's going to kill somebody that you maybe, I mean, that's not a safe person to be dating anyway, so I'm like, well, maybe in this situation you just get her out of that relationship. But
yeah, if he's that, I mean, it says like you love Joe, like you love Joe, he's a friend, but it's like
but you think he's gonna kill someone.
You think he's gonna kill, like I mean, if Joe's so great, then he's not gonna go raging, is he?
Yeah.
And if he has these fits of rages, like who's to say that Samantha wasn't having an affair because he's like awful?
Yeah, I mean, I still think in that situation that you should be honest and try and get out. Like, I think I don't think there's any excuse for cheating, but I also know that in like a domestic violence situation, you can't always just get out.
No.
But I would say that you should prioritise getting out in some way before you would start a new relationship, partly because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Like, for your own safety, if you're in that violent of a relationship, it's not worth the risk to date somebody else. Yeah. This is just not a very realistic scenario, really.
I don't think so.
Because if we're going with the fact that he's that violent, the answer is get Samantha out of that relationship and make sure that Joe is on some sort of watch. If he's not really that violent, we're ignoring that part of it, then I would give Samantha a timeline to tell him herself before telling him. Yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. I mean, it's not really much else you can say. It's a strange one, though.
Yeah, that is written by a 15-year-old.
Literally, it was rather elaborate. Final one, maybe?
Yeah.
Fun one. There are two shipwrecked sailors, A and B. They both see a plank that can only support one of them, and both of them swim towards it, like a plank board on there. Sailor A gets the plank first.
Is this just Titanic fanfiction?
Yeah. Sailor B, who's going to drown, pushes A off and away from the plank, and thus causes A to drown. Oh, okay. Sailor B gets on the plank and is later saved by a rescue team. Can Sailor B be tried for murder?
I mean, that's more of a legal question, but morally, do we think they should be tried for murder?
Yeah.
No, I think in certain survival scenarios that you could argue that that's self-defense. I mean, I don't think it makes you a great person to have done that, but I also think that when it comes down to saving your own life or someone else's, that we shouldn't judge people for what they choose, essentially. So even though I would probably judge that person a little bit, I just don't think that, I don't think that really fits the category of murder.
No. Yeah, no, I don't think, because, I mean, one can never know what they do in that situation until they're actually in it. So, someone can say, well, I would never do that, I would let the other person live. And it's like, well, I don't know, inherently as human beings, the general will is to survive, whatever that is. So, inherently. But, so when you're in that situation, your instinct is to, I need to get on this thing. So,
yeah. Even if they made a conscious choice knowing they were going to kill the other person, I'd still, even though it might not technically fit the criteria for self-defense because that person A wasn't trying to kill them, their action was going to kill the other person. So I think in that situation it's just kind of survival of the fittest.
Yeah, it is in a sense. Yeah. I mean, you could say, well, Sailor A got to the plank first, and in doing that, in getting on it, you're killing the other person as well. I know it's not as active as pushing them off, but you're still an agent in another person's death.
Yeah, I think in that situation it just has to come down to survival and nothing else. I don't think
you can't put morals on it, really.
No. And I'm sure they'll be living with that guilt for the rest of their life anyway, so I don't think there's any need to punish them more for that.
I'm sure there would be. I was thinking moral dilemmas, they're always about, like, these... It's always human on human, like, are you going to kill, or... Yeah, very intense.
Yeah, definitely.
But I suppose that's the whole point, it's to make you think and decide, and no trolley problems.
No trolley problems.
No trolley problems and so. Although we did.
Yeah, we did. We had to.
The classic. When you search moral dilemma, the trolley problem is what comes up. Wonderful. Thank you. That was good. You came up with some you articulated yourself so well.
Oh, thank you.
Some really good answers. And with the introduction, I was like, I have no brains left. But yeah, I'm sleepy today. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Goodbye.